I'm Alan. I'm with Zorianna Kit, and today we're reviewing Come On, Come On, stars Joaquin Phoenix, about a podcaster or a radio journalist, it's not really clear, whose job is basically to interview children about the world. And in the meantime, he has to take care of his nephew because his mother has to deal with her. Yeah, it's a complicated story, but there's a mental health issue here. And I just kind of want to get to the crux of the story, but it's this relationship between Joaquin Phoenix and his young nephew, and how a guy who's never had a child now has to kind of take care of one.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I have thoughts about it that don't necessarily apply to the art of the film, but I'm curious, what did you think of Come On, Come On?
Well, I love that you say that you have thoughts about it that don't necessarily apply to the film, because I think that literally was the film's intent. It is this story about a relationship between an uncle and a nephew, and the kid is very super quirky, and the uncle has never taken care of a kid before, and he often calls his sister, who's dealing with a mental health issue with an ex-husband, and she kind of tries to guide him through over the phone, and they themselves have a fraught relationship relating to, the death of their mother. So there are a lot of layers here. Mm-hmm. And so we see this relationship kind of blossom, but also filled with its own ups and downs. Nothing ever, there's no big thing that happens. There's no big revelation or no big, situation that occurs that makes that is like the movie hangs on to. It's just this sort of very sweet, very tender relationship that unfolds. And watching that relationship unfolds, it makes the viewer feel introspective about anything that they might have pertaining to the issues presented in the film. For instance, if you have someone in your family that struggles with mental illness, you're going to think about that. If you have something to do with, parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, that could be that. I think that really is what the goal of this film is.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I thought the performances were good. This is Joaquin Phoenix as close to being a normal person as you've ever seen him.
Yeah.
And this kid, Woody Norman, who plays 9 in the film, it feels very real for a 9-year-old. So, it's not one of these kids. It's not like The Sixth Sense where the kid is just a little too mature for his age.
Yeah.
Or it's not like Dakota Fanning, who's, it's a 9-year-old.
It's
and
it
feels very grounded and real.
Yeah, he's not a kid that's like the human head weighs 8 pounds in Jerry Maguire cute. Like this is,
or he's not an adult in a child's body. He's a 9-year-old.
Yes, exactly.
And he's kind of on that road to prepubescence, and so he reflects a lot on life, and he has, he's dealing with the trauma of a father who's suffering from severe mental issue.
Bipolar, right?
Bipolar. He's bipolar. And he's on and off medication, and Hoffmann's character has to go and rescue him, and so that's the situation here. So I liked the performances. I liked the story. You talk about reflecting. That's the thing I was doing through this whole film, because there were some underlying themes that I was just really struggling with, and I don't necessarily, I have a very broad approach to the theme. We see this a lot, but it's this idea that maybe children really do have the answer to save the world. And as great as that sounds, and as much as we that gives us good feelings, I just didn't really buy it in this film. They would interview kids. What would you do in the world? What's wrong with the world? How would you solve the world's problems? I think we're supposed to find some inspiration from that, and maybe this idea of, well, maybe we know too much about the world, so let's go back to see what a child says. And I feel like that's just, I don't know, a little pandering and a little heavy-handed.
Well, first of all, the screening that I went to, there was a Q&A afterwards with the director, Mike Mills, and the actress, Gaby Hoffmann, who portrays the boy's mother. And what we learned through this Q&A was that these kids that Joaquin Phoenix's character interviews for his like NPR type radio show, those were actual kids, and it was actually done kind of documentary style. So
Yeah, I believe that, I will admit that those weren't scripted. Those are kids'
yeah.
own thoughts.
But what's interesting is that his character for a living interviews these kids, but then when the table is turned or flipped, when he has to take care of this child who is the same age as the kids that he's interviewing, except this child has so many questions about life, like, what's wrong with my dad? Or how come you've never been married? He asks his
Mm-hmm.
uncle. Or pretend to be this or do that. Or he has a lot of questions. And then it makes Joaquin Phoenix's character have to answer things that he may not be prepared to answer. And he's so used to being the one asking the question. So I there was something quite clever about that,
Mm-hmm.
that I actually appreciated very much.
Yeah.
The other thing we learned through this Q&A was that this child, this 9-year-old Woody, is actually British. He's a British kid who can cry on cue and loves crying on cue. And it was like, just knowing this information after seeing this child performance, it just makes you appreciate this child performance even more so, because it felt so real.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking, God, is this improvised? Like, or the lines here feel so natural. But no, Mike Mills said that everything was scripted. There was no improv. No one was ad-libbing some of these charming or amazing or deep lines. It was all very scripted, yet it was played so naturally. And I think the bottom line for me from this movie, the takeaway was, we're all just trying to do our best in life. And there is no handbook on how to be and how to act. We're all raising the next generation just with whatever tools we have. Like, none of these characters are bad people. The mother's a good person. The uncle's a good person. The boy's a good person. Yet they're all kind of just trying to make their way and find their way. And there will be disagreements, and there will be meltdowns, and there will be, why me? Or why did this happen to me in my life? But everyone just keeps on going, and they just keep on doing their best. And I found that reassuring. I found that quite reassuring, because I'm a parent, I'm a single mother, I work, I have questions about the future. What am I doing? What will it be like for my kids? What's their future? What's the world's future? And we're all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.
Well, let me talk about my screening, because my screening, I did have a Q&A afterwards with Mike Mills as well, but my screening was full of young filmmakers. I believe these are high school graduates, around that age, and so the tone and tenor was, hey, you guys are the storytellers of the future, and so we're gonna, which was great. I mean, I'm all for that, and I think it was a great event for these students to be a part of. I think it's this issue that I have with balance when the kid begins asking questions. Why are you single? Why are you not married? Where's my dad? Things like that. A lot of times as parents, we just say, it's too heavy, you're not old enough, and you just slough it off. To me, what I appreciate about that aspect of it was this idea of honesty. I try to do that with my kid, where it's like, she asks an honest question, I'm going to give her an honest answer. She may not understand it, but at the same time, she probably does understand it, and I underestimate her. But at the same time, I think what I felt like with the story that they were telling was, I felt like that they were giving, the kid just a little bit too much power. He just can't go on and dictate all the rules. It was like, I feel like maybe as parents that they were giving into his, tantrums and his, just a little too much. And I feel like that, there's an apology scene, which is amazing. There's an apology scene that every parent really needs to grab onto. But I felt like, Joaquin Phoenix was apologizing, but at the same time, the kid did something wrong too, and he should, consider his actions and that maybe he needs to ask for an apology as well. And that's the kind of, this is the thing that was going on in my mind. I talk about that one scene, but this was going on a lot in this film, and it was like, and I think that's a testament to filmmaking, is if it gets you to think while the story is going on, they're what that means is they've engaged you, and it definitely engaged me, whether I agreed with the parenting philosophy, which, I'll say I agreed with about 80% of it, or if I didn't, I was still engaged with it. I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about it with my relationship with my child, relationships in general, and and these mental health situations that I've seen family members and friends go through.
What did you think of the black and white choice for this film?
Yeah, did he explain that at all at your Q&A, or?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of black and white. What I like about black and white is, from a cinematography standpoint, every shot has to be intentional. Everything has to be intentional about shooting black and white. The clothes you wear, the contrast of background and foreground, and I think and I think he talked about it being kind of it makes the film slightly surreal when you do it in black and white. And so I've always been a fan of black and white, so I have zero issues with it, and I think he did a great job with it.
Yeah, I felt that by taking away the color, you really focused in on the characters and what was happening there. The only thing that to me was a bit of a detriment is that this film takes place in several different cities, because you kind of follow Joaquin Phoenix's character and where his job takes him, and that is we have LA, New York,
and New Orleans,
and Chicago. We have Chicago as well. 4 cities. And I feel like those cities lost their character because they all kind of seemed interchangeable and kind of drab. Whereas I'm sure that if it was shot in color, there would have been a lot more vibrancy to the city. So, but maybe that would have taken away from our focus on the characters. So,
yeah, because I mean, in reality, they could have chosen any 4 cities.
Yes.
I think New York, just because he is from New York and they want to catch that vibe. But yeah, definitely LA, Chicago, and New Orleans. Those could have been interchangeable.
Yeah. But other than that, I didn't really have a problem with the black and white. For those who are listening to this or watching us and are having their own preconceived notions of what this movie is, I do have to say that this movie is a lot funnier. Like, this movie was surprisingly humorous. There were so many moments where you're laughing, and I'm talking not just 1 or 2, but a lot, because in life you do have to laugh at things, and there's a lot of things that made me laugh in this movie. So I do want to say this movie really has a sense of humor, and it's a lot funnier than you think, because I think we're kind of making it sound like it's kind of depressing or super introspective, and it's not. The kid's cute. Joaquin Phoenix in his most tender, most beautiful self. The chemistry is fantastic. This movie's just so sweet and so beautiful, and it's funny, and it's funny. It's not a comedy, but it's funny. So I do really want to encourage people to go see it. I really like it. There's something about it that just really, it really just touched my heart.
I'm thinking you really engaged with the material, engaged with subject matter. You like the performances and the appearance, the look of the film. So 8.5.
Yes, 8.5 is right. I really was touched in so many ways. It's one of those films where you keep thinking about it long after you've left the theater, but maybe not necessarily about it, but just about your connection to the film. I don't think you enjoyed it as much as I did. I do think you appreciated a lot of things about it. But I still think that you really respected this film a lot for what it was trying to do and what it did do, and the introspection it gave you. So I think you gave it an 8.
I gave it 7.5. I liked it. I did appreciate the subject matter, and I talked about my less than 100% buy into the theme of the movie, but enough to really like I said, if I'm wrestling with a movie, that means it's a good movie. It's definitely a recommendation from the both of us. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, let us know what you thought of the film, and with that, let's get out of here.